Luka Nation. First off, thank you, all of you guys listening on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. We had a record-breaking day yesterday, so I want to take a few seconds here. Thank you all for supporting us, whether you support us for a day, a month, or since the beginning of time. It means the world to us. Today, capping on that record-breaking performance, we have a special guest. You guys are in for a treat. This is one of those, if you're on the treadmill, if you're driving to work, wherever else you are, you're going to want to listen and probably listen to the end because there's going to be some treats here for you content creators, you newscasters out there, you card enthusiasts, you passionate fans. And the man sitting across from me, you've seen him on SportsCenter. You've seen him interviewing all of your favorite athletes, mostly the athletes you guys probably are collecting. And he's a huge Philly sports fan, diehard. So we have Mr. Kevin Negandhi. Welcome to Lucas Tigers and Browns Oh My show.
Hey guys, first off, love seeing both you guys together. I can talk to you guys too specifically on this because I'm a big fan of what you guys do on a daily basis. You guys grind every day, and every day I'm catching what you guys are doing. So it's nice to be a part of it. But Andrew, you put all the pressure on me now. Now I've got to have more than I've got to beat yesterday's viewership and audience. So anything I can do to help out, we've got to top it. I cannot have a drop off from what you guys did yesterday.
I don't think we will. And just to touch on that, like the grinding, when you have someone as amazing of a co-host as Cage, it's actually, I don't want to let him down, and I think same with you. Like you have amazing camaraderie, amazing chemistry with all of your panelists, whether that's SportsCenter, Mike Wilbon, Stephen A. Smith. For the people that don't know, because we'll get into the Phillies, we'll get into sports cards.
Yeah.
Did you always want to be on TV?
Yeah, it was like I was very lucky to kind of have the light bulb pop off. I wanted to become an architect when I was little. And when I was 9, 10 years old, I was a really good artist. And I was like, I want to draw buildings. I want to draw houses and design and all that. And then at 14, I took a building construction class, Andrew, when I was in 9th grade as a recommendation from my guidance counselor. And literally the first 2 weeks of that class, I hated everything about it. And I was like, I can't do this. And I had to finish out the year doing it. But I was absolutely miserable on, I've got to measure things. I've got to look at runners. I got to figure this whole thing out on, like, how do you fit a window? And I was like, I just want to draw. So later on that year, college basketball season, I remember watching a college basketball game, and they were talking about a 20-year-old at the free throw line, and I remember exactly where I was in my house, what I was doing, what the time of day was, and they highlighted this guy at the free throw line, and he said that he wanted to be a broadcaster, and the guy said, he wants our job. He wants to do what we do. They said that while he was shooting free throws, and at that moment, it was like, honestly, that cartoon where the bulb pops up and I said, whoa, I can get paid to do this. I can go to games and talk about basketball and talk about sports. I think I want to do this. I watched SportsCenter that night with Chris Berman. This was 1989. I'm dating myself. I watched SportsCenter that night, and that was the night I said, I want to be the first Indian American on ESPN. And that was a long journey to 17 years later. It happened as the first one in 2006. So it's crazy to kind of put that out in the universe and then realize all that, considering the odds that you face and the stuff that I had to go through and some setbacks where I left TV for a year and my career was done. I had gone another path, and then to come back and find my way and now be at ESPN for 16 years is pretty wild.
It makes it sound so glamorous. Meanwhile, if we can get in the time machine and go back to 1989, it's, it's probably like, Fritos on the ground, chips, and he's watching, and it's rumbling, stumbling, Eric sleeping with the enemy. You got Berman in the back, and then you're like, oh, wow, I got to do this. I'm going to be on ESPN. Like, it's but Chris Berman of all people.
Gage, to the point of the 14-year-old, right? You guys have experienced that. We all thought we were immortal, right?
Andrew still does.
I want to do this, right? And it's the power of the mind. It's the power of being resilient. Boomer is a good friend, a big supporter. A couple years ago, Boomer and I were at an event, and he pulled me to the side, and he was just like, I just want to tell you, on his own, I didn't ask him this. I just want to tell you, you could have hung with us. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you could have hung with us back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I said, what? My wife was right there at the time, and she understood what he was saying and how big of a deal that was. And I'll never forget it. I mean, that's getting approved by the boss. Like, the guy who set the standard for all of us who dreamt about coming to ESPN. Boomer is the company. And when he said that, it was one of the highlights of my career.
So notoriously, like you have Kevin Durant, LeBron, who want to play with superstars, veterans, and you have Curry, who's willing to like kind of help the young guys grow up. You know, Moody, Kuminga, takes them under their wing. Was there anyone that took you under their wing? Was like, hey, you know, Kevin, maybe this is kind of how we do things here. You know, try this. Was there someone like that?
Andrew, I love this question. There were a couple guys like that, and I went to go seek them out as well. I'm one of those seekers. If I have questions, go find the right people, ask the right questions, and you may not get the answers you want, but at least you have an idea of what to do. I sought out Bob Lee early in my career, and he was amazing to me. And he's still a good friend. I mean, listen, next to Chris Berman, it's Bob Lee, right? Especially when you talk about being the gold standard of journalism at ESPN and what he had done in creating Outside the Lines. So guys like that are the ones that I pursued to pick their brains. Bob. So I would do the morning sports center with Hannah Storm, who is a legend in her own. I did 5 years with her. So I just watched her and took things from her. And Bob would be, you know, in his office getting ready for Outside the Lines. So every single morning, my desk was right outside his office. So him and I would just talk. We would chop it up about everything, about life and all. And I would ask him questions about, what did you do here? What was this like? How'd you handle this? He was amazing. Van Pelt came up to me on his own. I think a handful of people have Van Pelt stories where I did a ESPN news show, and it was a late one. It was Padres A's, and it went till 5 a.m. So, you know, I didn't walk till 5 a.m, I should say, because we're on the East Coast, so we're wrapping up a West Coast game that went like 19 innings. Van Pelt did Sports Center that night. That's when Sports Center was here in Bristol late at night. And I just finished news. So we're walking down. No one's on campus. Him and I are just, hey, what's up? We're just talking, catching up. And then he goes, you know you could do this, right? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, I watch you all the time. You know you could do Sports Center. If you could do what you did tonight, you could do Sports Center anytime. And this is before you got the chance on Sports Center. It was like when you got to Sports Center, it was special, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, Scott, thank you. Thanks for saying that. And I've talked to a handful of other guys that have said Scott has done the same thing to them. And when you get the approval of a guy like that, who's now texting me about the Phillies run, you know, and he's a friend. He's a good friend. When you get the approval of guys like that, it just changes how you approach things, that somebody's noticing your grind. They understand what you go through because they've gone through it. You take that to heart. And the funny thing is I got my debut on Sports Center because of SVP calling out one night. They made a call to me to say, hey, we move people up in the order. Can you do the close show? And that's how I got the chance to do Sports Center that night. I felt
that's
like
almost the right way, right? Instead of like having to have nerves all day, it's like, just go do it. And then 100%. You could just be free.
I could picture it, by the way, walking into Bristol that night. It was sort of like, you know, Mac Jones this past week. And, you know, it's Mac Jones and Scott Van Pelt. And, you know, he was a little under the weather. And the fans were all calling for Negandhi. It was his Bailey Zappi moment. Sure. It was like, boom, bring him in there. Let's go.
I wish there were fans. It was me. I'm not going to curse. Oh, shoot. Don't mess this up. Because it was like one of those, this is now how you get that chance, right? I did the show with Robert Flores, who had done ESPN news shows many times. Flores said to me, he goes, hey, man, like we do on news every day. And I was like, great. Did really well. The next day, scheduling called me and said, hey, we got 2 more shows next week. That's when I knew I didn't have to have anybody pat me on the back. I was on the schedule the next week. Then the next week, 2 more. Then 2 more. And that's kind of how you find yourself wedging into kind of the consciousness of scheduling to say, hey, Kevin's available, let's get him on. I will say this other thing, Andrew and Cage, to anybody that's in this business, one of the early things I did when I got to ESPN was my first 2 months in, I called the scheduler who I had developed a good relationship with. I said, and I was working ESPN news shows. I said, hey, anybody calls out, please call me. That is NFL Live, College Football Live, Baseball Tonight. Call me. I'm available. I'm not going to take a holiday off. My wife was in TV. I told her, I said, we're not taking holidays off. And she was like, why? I said, because everybody else takes off. That's the only way I'm going to get an opportunity.
By the way, we're 10 minutes in, that last 30 seconds instead of people listening, because most people listening, they're from all walks of life, but people are trying to build stuff. People trying to build their own collection. People are trying to build their business. People got entrepreneurs who listen. We got people who are fans of, herbal enhancement. They listen for Andrew, but we got all kinds of walks of life all over the place with the podcast. And I'm an idiot. What can you do? But like Kevin, I'm going to be me, and he's going to be good enough. Whether Kevin's here or not, whether I'm sitting next to Chris Berman or not, or just Andrew, I'm me. So, but there you go. It's herbal. It's always herbal with you. But if you just listen to this, if you fast forward, you listen on like 25 speed, and anybody who fast forwards me, I feel bad for you. But if you listen to this quick time, you hear, all right, he realized one day as a teenager he's going to be on ESPN, and boom, he's on ESPN and he's on SportsCenter. It's not that easy, right? No. So, I'm glad you leaned into it without talking about like the couple times you were in jail and all those stuff. There are missteps all along the way, right? It's not just a straight shot, right? And this is important for collecting too, right? There are people out there who bought in the peak, you name it, we can kind of roll into that. But, I think it's important for folks to hear, it's not just a straight shot to the top of the mountain, right? No. Like, you had some stumbles along the way, right?
Yeah, and I'm actually glad I went through those stumbles. I wasn't ready to be on SportsCenter at 25. I had an opportunity to get to New York on ABC, and at 25, I didn't get the gig. And I every day I thank God I didn't get that gig. I would have been just destroyed. And it took me a year and a half to get to SportsCenter. I made it to ESPN News, but it took me a year and a half to do all these other shows. I needed that year and a half. So when I got to SportsCenter, I was ready. You don't want all that stuff early on. You need to grind. And my first job was in Kirksville, Missouri, market 199. And I'm a 23-year-old kid making $15,000, no mortgage, no car payment, no family. I could do that. But I worked there for 13 months, went to Sarasota, Florida, was there for 3 years, and I grinded there. So there is no, I always tell this to high school kids and college kids. There is no A gets you to B, gets you to C, eventually you get to Z. No, you'll go from A, jump to J, and then you'll go back to F. You may go back to A, and you got to restart again. You do not want that journey from A to B to C. And if you ask any anchor that's with us, we don't have the same journey. Elle Duncan, my co-host, she did 10 years of radio in Atlanta, grinding, and then she went to Nesson. So, there's a lot of different journeys that we all have. And I say that to you guys because in the space here with cards, I'm a late addition. And I took some stuff on the chin. I had to learn how to do it and go and come back and come back. And don't ever think that you see somebody's journey, you think it's that easy. It's not. They're not telling you all those times that they failed. You're just seeing successes.
And everybody comes into it different backgrounds too, right? Just think about it at ESPN, right? You're sitting over there. You're a Phillies fan, lucky for you. But you went to Temple. You get to be an owl on the broadcast, right? You're a Philly guy through and through. Think about poor Ravitch and Kornheiser. They went to Binghamton. What can they bring? What do they do?
Hey, Gage, I originally went to Syracuse. I was there for a semester, and it just wasn't a place for me. And going to Temple actually was the best decision I ever made in my career. So, that's another thing. I thought I got to go to Syracuse because Tirico went to Syracuse. Marv Albert went to Syracuse. Sean McDonough went to – I got to, all these big names have gone there. I've got to do it. No, you've got to create your own path. And Bob Costas went there. No. It's being you, like Cage, you mentioned. You yourself, being comfortable in your own space and then finding your way. Dan Patrick went to Dayton. And he still found a way, right? The school doesn't make you. It's what you do at the school.
So what's the deal with Syracuse? Well, why do so many anchors go there?
It's a great communications program. Okay. It's kind of like going to Duke, for basketball. Syracuse, Mizzou. There's a plethora of Northwestern guys like Wilbon and Greenberg. Like, it's just reputation. And those are fantastic schools, but Temple was perfect for me.
I got a question for you, because you sit in the mecca of sports right now. I mean, people say it's Madison Square Garden, but nobody wants to play there. Some people say it's Yankee Stadium, but man, the pinstripes
Nobody
are heavy
wants to
with
go
these
there.
complainers. They're such complainers. But I'm gonna say something now, and maybe weird. Maybe you'll accept me, maybe you won't. Is it weird for me to say that I will be rooting for the Phillies in this World Series? Like, I'm a Yankee fan. Should I just – no, I'm not rooting for any of these guys. Screw them all. We beat the Phillies in 2009. We're better than you. I hate the Astros so much.
That's what it is.
I mean, is it all right? Will you take me as a Philly fan for next year?
We will.
Yes.
We are the great uniters. We are uniting the country. And we were talking about this at the pod yesterday, at the 6 p.m. pod, about just the Astros. Listen, I think everybody knows that people cheat. Everybody cheats, especially in baseball. It's not just the Astros that were doing it. The one thing the Astros did, though, is let's just see. They beat the Yankees, right? They beat the Dodgers. Two big fan bases, right?
Yep.
And to win, to basically advance and do what they did in the World Series in the playoffs. I think when you have that brewing, and then you have the way the Astros were so defiant after they were busted, right? I think there's that brewing just bitterness. And listen, we were not expected to be here. And when you watch a Phillies game, you see that environment. You knock off the Cardinals as the underdog. You knock off the Braves as the underdog. You knock off the Padres as the underdog. I think America always identifies with that. And then you see the way the team beat the Padres and how they did it and how the city went nuts. It's easy to jump into that, right? That energy, because you're like, I want to ride this wave that everybody's riding right now. My wife's a Yankee fan, and deep down, she cannot stand the Astros like you, Cage. So jump on board. We're taking all the newcomers here over the next 2 weeks.
I mean, I love it makes it easy. They got the Rocky music in the background between pitches. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, it's like, this is it. You got to root for them. It's the underdog. Let's go.
I love it.
Maybe a little mentorship here. So the Phillies advanced to the World Series, right?
Yeah.
Yankees lost. And I come on the next day and I was watching both of these games and I'm like, how the Yankees are in an elimination game and how are there so many empty seats? And then I'm here watching the Philly, and I just know how Philly fans are. We love our teams. Maybe there's nothing to do. Maybe there's a ton to do in Philly. That's subjective. But I know anytime there's a game, our teams show out. Our fans show out. How do you remove like your biases the next morning? Because you're coming on as a fan, but you have to, I don't know if you be neutral, but like, how do you think about that stuff?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, Andrew.
And Cage is mad. I lost Cage because I hit shit on the Yankees again. I apologize. They're the best.
No. I'll answer after Kevin gives an answer.
The late, great Stuart Scott, I think, did a lot of things for us at ESPN. He opened the door that it's okay to be a fan and let it bleed. But one thing Stuart did was he was always objective. When it was his team, you saw a certain energy, but he was always good at his job. Stuart was known for all his catchphrases and style, but there was always substance there in every highlight read. He was one of the best highlight readers in the business, if you actually broke it down. So Stuart, I watched him closely. Stuart was a friend, and I thought when I came to ESPN, all right, I'm not going to say anything because, and then, when the Phillies made their run in 2008, I started letting it bleed. And then when the Eagles did what they did the one thing is, when my teams do bad, I eviscerate them. I don't hold back. 2009, Eagles blow the NFC Championship game to the Cardinals. I'm on the set. They had the lead. They blow it in the fourth quarter. I'm watching with Trent Dilfer and Merrill Hodges on the set with me. Game's over. And for the next 25 minutes, I go all in and destroying Andy Reid in the second half with adjustments. And that defense letting the team down. That's not being a homer. That's just knowing my team more than anybody else and calling them out on it. And I take great pride in that actually helps me when I'm calling games or doing a highlight. I know everything inside and out on why this happened. And I will never shortchange. Listen, we have fun with the Cowboys. I have fun with the Giants. I will never shortchange those teams because that's not fair to the fan base. I will have fun with them. Or if there's like Darren Woodson, who used to be a Cowboy guy, with us, legend. Him and I would go back and forth on the air, But the Cowboys win, man. He deserves to have all the trash talking, right? Elle Duncan's a Braves fan. When the Braves won, she had all the rights to, trash talk. So I am one of those guys that, hey, man, have a connection with the audience. The audience loves the idea that you're one of them. I was a fan. That's why I got in the business. I'm going to be objective when I have to, but I'm also not going to be a robot, because fans don't want a robot when they watch TV. They want to feel it with you, right? They want you to have the same energy that they have. And so to me, when I'm doing serious interviews, everything's out the door. If somebody in Philadelphia screws up, I'm calling them out more than anybody else. But at the same time, I'm going to have fun if my teams are rolling. And right now, it's fun.
Cage, before I let you go, who would you be calling out right now with the Sixers start?
Who, me?
Yeah. If you put on the spot,
I would
1-4.
I would be calling out that it's October and it's not time to panic. I would be calling out that, look at the Phillies. They were horrendous. They were 22-29 at one point. Changed the manager, changed the whole team. There was a threat they weren't going to even make the playoffs in September. It's not how you start the season. Joel Embiid has had slow starts in October. I am not worried. Judge the team in 2 months. You'll have December 25th is kind of the marker, and where you're about a quarter into the season. That's when we'll judge the team. We'll judge the team again at the All-Star break. I'm not worried about the Sixers team right now.
I love the answer. 4 or 5 games.
My philosophy is get in, right? Let's just get into the dance, make sure we're healthy, and then let's be the hot team. We're seeing that with the Phillies.
I saw a stat this morning, 4 or 5 games. I think the Lakers play 4 games now, right? The Lakers with last night's game, 4 or 5 games. I saw a stat that, not only they're 0-4, but in the first 4 games, they take like 140 something 3-pointers, and they've made 22% of them. Yeah. And it's the worst clip of shooting in NBA history. Their futility record has been compared.
You guys know Russell Westbrook's percentage over those 4 games?
-6. But they compared him to the 2012 Bobcats and the 2015 Celtics, who the Celtics started off like 1-15. Mm-hmm. Like over 4 or 5 games, you can make any kind of like crazy comparison and that kind of stuff. Don't overreact. It's 5% of the season. So don't get nuts. That said, Andrew's question, and I love the fandom stuff because I'm a fan, and we do a Whatnot show every Sunday where we do football picks and plays and stuff. And every time I pick the Raiders, I'm a Raider fan. Yep. Every time I pick the Raiders, I say, guys, this one here, I'm using a little heart and a little head. So take it with a grain of salt. I'm always going to say the Raiders are probably better than they are because I'm a fan.
Yes.
It's the fandom that sneaks in. So, and I don't own any Mahomes cards because I'm a Raider fan and I hate the Chiefs. So, take that with a grain of salt too. Andrew tries to convince me Mahomes is the greatest quarterback ever. As far as the question,
the greatest coach ever.
About Andrew came in and said, hey, the Yankee Stadium was empty. And Phillies, they're all there. They're rocking and rolling. The Phillies are there. And so what my answer, I guess, the second time we brought it up was, one, it was a rain delay for like 2 hours. It was a Sunday night. And, it's like a whole to-do. It's cold in New York, the whole deal. But here's the real answer that I didn't want to give you because I don't want to rain on the Phillies parade, right? So since 2009, when the Yankees beat the Phillies in the World Series, right, the Yankees have been to 10 postseasons. Including they have been there 16, 17, 18, 19. They've been there like the last 6 years with championships, wild card, division rounds, championship. We're used to a Sunday night playoff game in a championship round. We get them almost every year. You haven't been there since 2011.
100%.
Of course the fans are going to be there and want to fill the stadium. You might not see it again for 2 decades. We'll see it next year.
100%. That's an excellent point. But I will say that when we had our run, a decade ago, every single night in the ballpark, right? You can't shortchange us with that when it comes to our passion. So there's just something special about October baseball in Philadelphia. But you make a great point. We haven't been there in 11 years. So it's like, oh, my God. I mean, that's why the price of the tickets are comparable to 2016 with the Cubs in the World Series.
Yeah, right? I talked about that with Andrew. I said it's actually cheaper if you're a Phillies fan to buy a ticket, hotel, and the game in Houston. And then your way back. It's actually less money.
Some fans they were going to San Diego for the Padres games because it was just easier to travel across the country, get a ticket, and watch them there.
It's expensive.
I'll be there, by the way, Halloween night, Game 3. Can't wait.
Good.
Nice. There he goes. I think they're going to win. Bryce Harper, man, not getting his due. I mean, and it's good. It's nice. It's nice to see. It's like Martha Stewart with all the street cred now. We beat the hell out of her, and now all of a sudden she's Snoop's best friend. It's like Bryce.
Kev, how did you? Where did your passion for collecting cards come from? So I know you have 2 little boys, right?
I do, and a little girl, yeah.
And a little.
So it started when I was 14, 15 years old. Obviously, the Ken Griffey Jr. Upper Deck card, I think, sucked a lot of us in our 40s in. And then I got into pro set with the NFL and score, and that magical score set with the green rookies with Barry Sanders and Troy Aikman. I remember I bought Troy Aikman, Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders, Derek Thomas, all for $0.25 each of those cards. I had one of them graded recently, came back a 9. Wow. But I remember buying it, 30 plus years ago. And so that's where I got into it. And then I got in, at the time where junk wax came in, right? In 91, 92, 93, and you could just buy a gazillion Donruss cards with the speckled paint in the background and the awful score yellow backgrounds, and then Upper Deck in basketball. When Upper Deck came out in basketball and football, it was the coolest thing in the world. So, what was it? Pro Hoops. I had the David Robinson card.
Yeah, David Robinson Hoops, the Admiral.
And that was Navy. That was a monster card. So I got sucked in that 4-year window. And then,
and you know what packs were out? The packs I had you open from Chantilly this weekend. I don't know, Kevin, if you watched on YouTube. You probably didn't because you're busy on television. Yeah. But we opened up. I was walking around the show and I found packs of cards from that 91 score. And Andrew opened. It's it wasn't even. It was some from wax packs.
Yeah.
But he opened up as a plastic pack, and he got a Reggie White Dream Team out of it. Really cool looking card. It was like a dark picture of him running and stuff like that.
This is Derek Thomas.
And there's the Derek Thomas he got. I think that was an Upper Deck card. And there's the Reggie White Dream Team. Now
PSA 10 after the drop.
So it's just a cool looking card, right? So I asked him. I said, "How much do you think these packs were?" And he's like, "I don't know, a couple bucks." 3 for $1.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're still sealed and they're over there there you go.
Today, 3 for $1. Not back then.
That's how much they were. 3 for $1 at the show.
Amazing.
3 for $1.
Yeah, inflation has not hurt that part.
That's how much they were when we were buying them. That's how much they are still today.
Yeah. Crazy. So I stopped. I stopped when I was 17, 18 years old. Wish I just kept on just keeping an eye on it. It's funny, I got it back into it a few years ago because my wife came home with packs that she's with the boys. This was 4 or 5 years ago where they're 5 and 3, and then they're 6 and 4. And she would get these packs because they were into sports at Walmart and Target, and she'd bring them home. And I'll never forget my oldest boy. I think at the time he was 6 years old. He started opening a couple packs. And we hit on Luka rookies and Trae Young rookies. And I said, "Son, let me take these cards away. I'll be right back."
Let me hold on to these.
Put them in some plastic.
This is for your college at the rate we're going.
So I put two of them away for a couple years. One of them's we got graded as a 10. It's the hoops one. It's Luka's rookie. It's all blue. That's at the time, I think it was $1,000 card when I got it back as a PSA 10. And I came back and I gave it back to him. And I was like, this is why we do what we do and why Dad took it away. So the problem is that I've raised, 2 snobs.
Yep.
They only want the high-end packs. The minute they don't have a rookie, they give me everything else. I'm like, no, this is a cool-looking card. They're like, it's not his rookie. I could care less. So what we've done is we've opened up packs, and then I've gone back from a couple years ago and said, let's take a look at remember this guy? Look, now he's playing well. Remember this guy now? Because it's really tough with baseball to prospect, right? Because these guys they're not known. But basketball and football, my kids are so into it. And now they've seen me take a step back, and now I'm like, let's just collect what we like. Who do you like? One son loves Russell Wilson. And it's not a good time right now, but he wants all the Russell Wilson cards through the years. My other son wants a bunch of Eagles, but he loves John Morant and Fernando Tatis. So he wants all Tatis and John Morant. So we took a step back after saying, just rookie cards to now let's do what the sole purpose was in the beginning. Let's collect because we love to collect. Let's identify, like Cage said, with certain players and certain teams, and that's what we're doing right now, which is great.
Might be fun to buy some Phillies. You guys, as a family, probably watch some of these games. And look, I got this Alec Baum card, or look, I got a Bryce, or I'm that kind of
To
stuff.
your point, I just opened up Topps Chrome the other night. When the Phillies were down 3-2, I told everybody in the room, if they come back and win this game, and I called the Harper home run, if they come back and win this game, I'm going to take you to the store and I'll buy you whatever you want.
Let's go. Let's go.
Aligning incentives. This is a leader right here. Align your incentives.
Right? So we go to Walmart, and I'm like, we go down the aisles. I'm like, get whatever you want. Just, just be smart. I'm not buying anybody a PS5.
I'm not Shaq here. I'm not buying out the whole store.
Exactly. And then we find some Topps Chrome, the update series. So we come home, we break a couple of, and it's like the Zach Wheeler, and I'm like, and then we celebrate it again, the Alec Baum. So to your point, Cage, it's like we brought it back to what we started that day for and why we could still identify with our teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to bring it all back to that, and I can't anymore because the Yankees lost. But it's always next year.
What?
7, you're good.
So NFTs and cards were taking off the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And usually cards are like kind of ancillary, right? They're sitting on the periphery, but they became mainstream. And I'm curious, like Scott Van Pelt, the people you work with, what did they say when they saw these high ticket items, these record sales, the players that they've been talking about for years and probably prospecting on in their kind of what they
Kevin, get away from me with those cards, you nerd. I'm gonna go play Dungeons and Dragons.
Why did I not buy a Brady rookie?
Andrew, what's crazy is over the last 2 years, I've been hit up by so many people at ESPN. We did a YouTube show, Josh Luber and I, briefly, and it was on an ESPN channel. We did, I think, like 6 shows, talking about the business and high-end cards and stuff. Get hit up by anchors nonstop. Hey, I've got this card. Is it worth anything? Can you put me in touch with somebody at PSA? Should I, get this card graded? I can't begin to tell you how many ESPNers behind the scenes and front and center on camera reach out to me to talk about cards. There were so many of us that were into it in our past. Pulled out a box, boom, found a bunch of cards. What do you think of this? I sent multiple guys to like Jeremy Fowler and Randy Scott to like a local card dealer that we have here who has a card shop, who's the best person in the world because he's great to my kids and we love him to death. And they're like, oh, we're going back. So I think there's still a hobby love for it. It's just finding it, for us to pop up mainstream every now and then with the Mano card and that conversation. It's really cool. I also like that we're still a little bit underground. I don't know why. But we do talk about it every now and then, especially when I get a text, hey, what do you think of this card? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm coming over. I want to see what else you have. That's what we do, right? And then we start taking a look at all the cards that we have. Tom Haberstroh, who used to be with us, and now he's with the Lebitard group. He's big into stats and analysis. Him and his brother had a really nice collection. They pulled out some Bird rookies where I was like, yo, those are popping. That's fantastic. So I think you'll stumble upon a couple guys that have something, and you're like, all right, I love that. And then behind the scenes, there's producers and content creators that come by, and I'll see them at a card show, and they'll pop up. There's one guy who his name's Johan. Love the guy to death. He's got so many colorways of cards, and they're all ungraded of high-end rookies. And I just sit there and I'm like, dude, you just tell me when you're ready to unload them, and I'm here. And he's like, nope. So there's a passion for many guys behind the scenes.
I think the reason what I've learned that the hobby stays underground is we're kind of all chasing similar stuff. And if we divulge our secrets, we're kind of, someone else will get it before us.
Yes.
Right? It's not.
Yes.
There is still that element. Like we do a show every day. So there's often times where Cage was like, hey, I'll tell you guys, but I would be probably buying this myself. Right.
Yeah. So I tell them, but we have to. Otherwise I would just be buying them all like this.
Right. But 99% of people are like, I kind of want that card. I don't want to go tell people about it and make it more expensive. I want to buy it. So
yeah, Andrew, I'm glad you brought that up. That how do you guys handle that? Because that is something I find very curious. In the beginning of me coming back in the industry, when guys would bring that up, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to go buy that card, not being aware that person was actually just saying that to pump up his card prices. Does that make sense?
course.
And then I got hook, line, and sinker, and I had to learn, whoa, somebody's pumping up the market. I've got to now take a step back. How do you guys handle that? What do you guys do in managing that?
I can tell you what I did. So when we first started, I had my collection, and I sort of like froze it in time for a year to just be the best that I can be at this and not have that perceived conflict of interest or the conflict of interest. So I did from maybe December 2020 to beginning of this year when I moved back from Mexico. It was a little easier. I was also living in Mexico. Yeah. So I was like, I'm just going to freeze this and I'm going to work on my skills, work on my skills as a news anchor, improve at this. And there will come a point in time when I'll go and buy and all that stuff. But for right now, I'm just going to freeze it.
Wow. That's
twofold. One, as a person who owns cards, and then two, as a person who buys cards, right? So we take it two ways. Number one, I try to treat this, because we're out here talking every day, as if I am like CBS Market Watch and I'm covering a stock in the stock market. And at the end of the article that I'm writing, I have to, say I'm long that stock, I'm short that stock, I own a small position, I own a large position. So if I'm talking about, Joe Montana rookie PSA 10, I let people know, guys, I have one of these, so blah blah blah. I'm talking about one. That is not as easy to do when you have a lot of cards. So I've spent a lot of this year trying to pare down my collection so that I can even get to
consolidate.
The point maybe
if you're using someone else's word,
consolidate is a word, sure. It's a popular.
I just tied it back. I just put his brain in a present.
You did because it's another.
You guys have heard about Mad Kramer, but this is Mad Cage.
Yeah, man. So, but the less, I want to get to a point where, my collection is something I can actually just, here you go, guys. Here's what I own. You know what I mean? Like, it's public. Like, here's the 50 cards that are in my PC. And if it changes, I'll let you guys know. That way, there's no kind of appearance of impropriety. From a buying side, it is a huge lesson, Kevin, for you, for me, for anybody who's in the hobby now or coming into it. And it's funny because it's almost morphed recently as the market's changed. From when the market was up, it was like, all right, I love this. Look at this F1. Oh, I love this. Look at this soccer. Oh, I love this. Look at it. And then, all of a sudden, you jump into it and, you go and people are buying it. And like, oh, wait a second. Maybe the people who are saying this is a great place to get into, they already owned it. And you became their exit liquidity. Now you see it with pivots. Like, people are going to like hobby adjacent stuff, right? They go to like Funkos. Oh yeah, look, Funkos are the next thing. Everybody go get your Funkos.
Well, PSA started in a grade though, so the supply's going to be low.
See, I said that without saying it. You just went right forward and said PSA is literal. A little bit. Everybody knew what I was doing without saying that sentence.
Kevin makes his collection's easy. So you see him, you think he's Staten Island, Sopranos, probably has a gold Rolex, slick back hair. His collection's none of that. It's like Satchel Paige, the Babe Ruth photo where he's like looks like he got really, really fat. Just boring stuff. Up until this year, I don't think he had a shiny card in his collection.
Black and white doesn't make it boring.
So no one is buying this stuff Cage is buying.
Hey, listen, I also want to give Cage a shout out. I saw him at the National a couple years ago. It was great, actually, just bumping into you guys randomly and hanging out. Andrew, you were fantastic as we talked about hoops that night, right? Mm-hmm. Cage was like, he was the mayor of the entire room. In every room we were in, he handled everybody so well, and then he's handing out cards. Like, I remember he gave me a card of one of my coworkers, Charlie, who I see every day. And he's like, yeah, here's a card, like Cage is one of those guys that you get into a conversation with him and you're like, oh, that's a friend for life. And he has that ability wherever he goes. So I got to give you a ton of credit. You guys made the National a lot more fun for me because it was my first experience navigating through everything. I was like, I just met these guys. I listened to their podcasts, and now it feels like they're friends for life. So much credit to both what you guys did.
Have a question for you.
And real quick, just to paint you guys a picture of I just met you guys. It's in an intersection. It's like, do you want to go? Do you want to go to dinner?
You want to go to dinner?
Yeah.
You want a steak? Let's go. Yeah. Well. So it's funny. Listen, you're a celebrity, and whether you like it or not, and we are not. But what's funny about this is even there are levels to the game, right? There's, one of my favorite lines from Ghostbusters 2, Bill Murray says, yes, they made a Ghostbusters 2, not the abomination that came out recently. Bill Murray, they're cleaning the dirty laundry in his room. And he's like, what are you doing with that? Sigourney Weaver's like putting his laundry away. He's like, it's not just dirty and clean. There are many subtle levels of laundry, like my jeans. There are subtle levels of popularity and fame. And I was lucky enough through this podcast and through the people we've met and through people like you coming on and making us look way more important than we are. I got to meet what I would consider a childhood hero of mine this past weekend in Virginia. We got to sit down and talk to Don Mattingly and talk baseball. And, Andrew even told him, hey, I said baseball is going to be dead in 15 to 20 years. They don't make a change. And Mattingly looked at him and said, you're right. You're not crazy. And we're making some changes in the whole deal. That was I
finished that with a question. Do you agree? And feel free to pick holes.
I mean, it was a surreal kind of thing. So the pivot, you're a star to us. We're like, wow, get rid of Negandhi. Has there been I don't need you to call out anyone to the detriment of anybody else, right? Because you get to meet a lot of people and they're all awesome. But has there been like that Mattingly moment for you? Did you get to, in what you're doing, like, who's that person where you were like, I can't believe I just met, boom.
There have been a handful.
I'm sure.
Like Bo Jackson, multiple times. He's my favorite athlete of all time. And I've got to interview him 3 times, and I did a really, really cool segment with him outdoors at ESPN once. That was amazing. So if you look here in my background, I've got a Mike Schmidt jersey right there. And on the other side,
Mike Schmidt. He was awesome.
And on the other side, I have a Julius Erving jersey. Those are the 2 guys for me. And I'll never forget Mike Schmidt. I'm walking out of building 3 to go to Sports Center on campus. And I'm walking out. It's 8:30 in the morning. I look over, and who's waiting in the reception room? Mike Schmidt. So I'm literally walking out, and I stop, and I'm like, holy crap, that's Mike Schmidt. So the 14-year-old in me turns around and says, screw my show, I'm talking to Mike Schmidt. I said, Mike, what are you doing here? And he's like, yeah, I just did something on Mike and Mike. And I was like, what, like, that's it? He goes, yeah. I said, you want to join us on Sports Center? And he's like, sure. I literally texted my coordinating producer. I said, Mike Schmidt's in the reception room. We're getting him on Sports Center in the next hour. And then he's like, okay.
And
I'm on, and he was great. It was like one of those pinch me moments. Meeting Dr. J. Julius Erving was one of those, again, the 8-year-old kid who went to the parade in 1983 when the Sixers won. That was a pinch me moment. So I've been really lucky to meet the guys that I grew up watching and wanting to be like.
Andrew,
I'm surprised you could do that.
You're a Philly guy.
I've heard of the name. I've heard of the name. I know he's a Philly legend. It's way before my time.
I mean, that's like a blue collar guy. Like he
Schmidt.
epitomizes.
He's the greatest third baseman of all time.
Ever. The
My
best
grandpa's last name was Schmidt. My grandpa's last name was Schmidt.
You might be related to him.
Nice.
You gotta get there. I mean, won the World Series in '80, beat the Royals in '80, right? I mean, how many Gold Gloves? 10 or something like that.
Seriously, the
500
best,
home runs,
548. Yeah, Mike Schmidt is. So as a kid, he was the guy. We all wanted to be Mike Schmidt. And to me, that was the ultimate. So
he probably has a mad stash. They love the stash.
He did. He had a great stash.
Makes sense.
He did.
Yeah.
He had a great stash.
He had a great stash. Makes total sense. Yeah.
Great.
I'm surprised that a big company like ESPN Disney would have just have that flexibility or the speed. That's what probably makes you guys dangerous. You have the production quality, but you're able to, hey, in an hour, let's have this guy on. No teleprompter, no script. And I think that combination of off the cuff versus with planned is probably what makes you guys so dangerous.
Andrew, thank you for saying that. That's what we do, right? Every day. It's react, do what you got to do. I'll share one quick final story about that on like what's crazy. So the night of the Ben Simmons draft, I did Sports Center that morning from 9 to 12, right? And the Sixers and I had a great relationship, and they were like, we're having a huge party down here, Ben Franklin Parkway in Philadelphia, and we want to go live with you. Would you be interested? And I'd be like, yeah. So I pitched this to my producers and people that were doing the 6 p.m. show, 2 different shows. Hey, this is what's going on. And then my contact was like, I've got Allen Iverson. He's going to join you live, but Iverson will not talk to anybody but you. He won't let you. So you got to be here. He's not going to do like a satellite interview. So I pitched that to the 6 p.m. guys. They're like, all right, we'll do with it. Go with it. I leave here at 12 o'clock. It's a 4-hour drive to Philadelphia. Unfortunately, that day, I didn't get in till 5:55, and the show starts at 6. So I communicated to the producer, and Lindsay Zarnak was the anchor, and I'm like, hey, listen, I'll get him at 6:30. And the producer says to me, I'll give you 3 minutes. And I said to the producer, I didn't drive 5.5 hours to interview Allen Iverson for 3 minutes. I said, just go with me. Let me see what we can do. But just let me have more than 3 minutes with this interview. And this was the summer before Allen was getting inducted in the Hall of Fame. He was in a phenomenal space. We had met before. I've interviewed him before. We hugged it out and all that. And I could just tell Allen was feeling himself. The crowd was loving it. Interview went 9 minutes. Didn't hear the producer once. He hugged me multiple times. Was in near tears twice. And it was one of the best things I'm most proud of when I talk about just adjusting, adapting in what we do. And he was raw and real. And this, you brought this conversation up about my fandom. I think my background and knowing everything he's gone through in the city and why that environment hit him home the hardest and why he was so emotional paid off in that conversation with him, right? So all that stuff came together. And that was one of those moments where it's like, this was it. This was great. We had a moment and we captured Allen at his best with the crowd. And I'm pretty proud of that ESPN understands that flexibility and goes, let's get the best TV. Let's do it. And let's get it on the air.
And only a fan
for
would
your
know,
Emmy consideration. I mean, the trophy got lost in the mail. I mean, that's what happened.
But it's a good point because only true Philly fans would know how much the city still loves Iverson and how it was all of the extra noise about practice and stuff that wasn't created by the city at all.
Yeah.
The city loves Iverson. People still wear. I have the Iverson shoes that Panini and Reebok put together that collab right there to my left. There's still people rock those shoes. We love Iverson through and through.
And he had a love-hate relationship with that town. And they love him.
I think with media. I think media put him in a bad light with like that whole practice because the practice thing, his friend died that week.
Exactly.
So it was just a clip taken. And it was like, you asked me about practice, my friend died. And they were like, the media took it. It was like, you asked me about practice, I don't want to practice.
Yes.
And the guy always left his heart on broken finger.
Damn media.
So,
those sports media always taking stuff out of context. They're the worst.
Well, I'm sure we shouldn't group media together either.
I get it. No, Andrew, I get it. I get what you're talking about. But also, he had an up and down relationship, like with the fans, because some nights it was like, oh, what are we doing, you know? And him and Larry Brown didn't get along. So again, like it was just capturing him coming back and how much he really loved that group of people around him and how it transformed his life. And it was one of those proud moments for me where it's just like, I'm glad I experienced that with a guy who's an icon in the city.
It's up and down. If you win in Philly, you're in forever. That's why Mike Schmidt is still hanging on the wall right there. I mean, he was the World Series MVP in '80, right? I mean, if Bryce Harper manages to win in Philly, there's no up and down. You know, that's your guy, right?
They've put up multiple murals on walls and buildings throughout the city this week on Bryce Harper. Multiple murals. And Bryce Harper's already a god after that home run.
By the way, that's my home phone that's ringing in the background. That has got to be that. I still have one, right? That is got to be some candidate who is asking me for my vote or some finance or some whatever it is. I'm one of those old farts that still has a home phone. And it will not stop. Oh, stop.
He won't disconnect it either.
I won't
disconnect. He's that guy. Kevin, it's truly a pleasure. Will you be at any shows in the future?
I hope so.
Like sports car shows?
I was supposed to be at the National this past year in Atlantic City. My oldest son, 10-year-old, made it to the state Final Four in baseball, so I had to scrap plans.
It's a blessing.
I will be at Nationals down the road. Like my son at the time was like, Dad, can we just go to the card show? I'm like, no, you're playing in the state Final Four, and you're a critical player. We're playing it. So I will be at shows. Trust me. I love the hobby. People are phenomenal, and talking to guys like you guys carry the hobby. So definitely count me in.
And it's just, guys, on Instagram, Kevin Negandhi. First name, last name. We'll post clips. We'll do a collab post.
And despite the fact that people are asking for it, Mint Collective, he's not going to come and fight Lefko. There's not going to be like
Lefko's my guy. Come on, man.
It's not going to be like a cage match. It's not gonna be... Oh, man. It's going to be fun stuff. Listen, we'd love to have you wherever it is. Thanks for coming on, and good luck to the Phillies. Have fun at the game. Game 3. They're going to be up 2-0. That's it. Going to go to 3.
Let's get a split in Houston. Changes the series. That's all I want.
Leave earlier so you don't have to drive 5.5 hours. And then, when you have that, that's feeling like the anxiety, like, am I going to even make it on time? That ruins drive. So, get there, tailgate. Kevin, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Appreciate you, Andrew. Cage, thank you.
So thank you all for listening to another episode of Lucas, Tigers, and Bronzo My. I wanted to tell you about a new service that we have starting as of today, and I'm really, really excited to bring it to you guys. So as a part of our partnership with SGC, we got 50 free submissions every single month, and many of you have taken advantage of that. And it's amazing that we could have the opportunity to 650 episodes, 675 episodes in, to go ahead and give back to our community. As people were sending those cards in, they asked, can we send 5, 10, 20 more cards to you guys? We'll pay for it, but we wanted them graded with SGC. You guys know SGC is turning cards around in 13 to 14 business days, have incredible customer service, and their secondary market values are going up day after day after day. And that's exciting for the hobby and exciting for the grading landscape. So we didn't want to just rush into it. We wanted to do it right. And what we did was I relocated here to Boca Raton, Florida. I opened up a P.O. box maybe 5 minutes away from SGC, and I will be hand delivering and hand picking up the cards. So you don't have to worry about anyone else touching your cards. It will be me, and I will update you every step of the way. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to personally pick up the cards from a P.O. box, prep them, new card saver, new penny sleeve, and deliver them to SGC every single Tuesday. Why Tuesday? Well, it lets the stragglers over the weekend come back through on Monday and gives me a day to prep, and it basically gives SGC the entire week to work on grading those cards. Once your cards pop, only then at the end of the process will you be paying for the service. It's $25 per card, simple as that, and the turnaround times have never been faster. We're hearing right now 13, 14, less than 20 business days. So there it is. 9170 Glades Road, number 135 is the P.O. Box in Boca Raton, Florida, 33434. 9170 Glades Road, number 135, Boca Raton, Florida, 33434. Of course, you could shoot me an email or shoot me a text anytime, and I'm always available. Many of you already have my email. It's iamandrewgoldberg@gmail.com. or my cell phone number, 215-519-9154. Reach out with any questions. I could walk you through the process. I've hopped on the call with quite a few of you, and I'm happy to do that. Love you, Luka Nation.